shoemaker named Simon, who had neither house nor land of his own, lived with his wife and children in a peasant's hut, and earned his bread by his work. Bread was dear and work was cheap, and what he earned he spent on food. He and his wife had but one sheepskin coat between them, and even that was worn to tatters. It was autumn, and Simon wished to buy a new sheepskin for winter. He had saved a little money, 3 rubles, but when he went about the village collecting what was owed him, one peasant put him off, and another gave only a little grain. Simon walked home empty-handed, his coat flung over one shoulder against the cold. He drank what remained of his money at a tavern and set off on the long road home, his heart bitter, the frost creeping around him. As Simon neared the chapel at the edge of the village, he saw something pale and still leaning against the wall. He drew closer. It was a man, young, lean, and naked, sitting barefoot on the ground in the bitter cold. His face was gaunt and his eyes were closed. Simon felt afraid. He thought, who could have stripped this man so? If I go near him, something bad may come of it. And yet his heart would not let him pass by. He turned back and bent over the stranger. The man raised his eyes, large, quiet, and full of some deep knowing, and looked at Simon without a word. Simon was frightened by that look, but he pulled off his own worn coat and pushed it toward the man. He helped him to his feet and said gruffly, "Come along then. Come home with me." Simon's wife, Matryona, was not pleased when he brought the stranger home. She had been waiting, worrying where her husband had gone, and when she saw him return without sheepskin, without money, and with a barefoot stranger beside him, her temper rose sharp. She scolded Simon bitterly, but as she turned to fetch what little food remained, she glanced at the stranger. He sat quiet in the corner, not moving, not speaking, his eyes cast down. Something in his stillness, his helplessness, moved her. She brought out bread and the last of the soup and set it before him. The stranger ate, and when he looked up at Matryona, he smiled. It was the first time he had smiled since Simon had found him. Matryona felt something loosen in her chest. "He is a man," she said softly. And that was all. The stranger stayed the night, and then another. The stranger gave his name as Michael. He said nothing of his past, and Simon did not press him. Simon taught him to make shoes, and Michael proved a swift and willing learner. By morning he could sew as well as Simon himself. Word spread of Simon's new workmen, and orders came in from all parts. Life in the little household grew easier. Yet Michael remained always quiet. He never laughed, never spoke needlessly, never looked out the window, and never once went outside. In all the time he lived with Simon, he smiled only twice. The first time was when Matryona set food before him that first night. The second time would come later. Simon grew fond of him, as one grows fond of a steady, silent companion. He asked Michael once what had happened to him. Michael only said, "God is punishing me." And Simon asked no more. One winter day, a gentleman came to Simon's door in a fine fur coat. He wanted boots. Not ordinary boots, but boots that would last a full year without losing shape or coming apart at the seam. He spoke sharply, warning that if the work was poor, Simon would be jailed. He slapped a piece of thick leather onto the table. Simon trembled a little at the man's manner, and when the gentleman had gone, Simon turned to see what Michael made of him. And there was Michael, standing behind Simon, gazing not at the door where the gentleman had gone out, but upward, at the corner of the room, as though he saw something there. Then Michael smiled, his second smile. He turned back to the work table, picked up the gentleman's leather, and began to cut. But he cut not the shape for a boot. He cut the shape for a burial slipper. That same evening, a woman came to the shop with two small girls, twins, with bright eyes and rosy cheeks, bundled warmly against the cold. She needed boots made for them. As Simon looked at the girls, he noticed that one of them walked with a slight limp, and that both seemed happy and well-loved. He remarked on this to the woman. She told him that they were not her own children. Their mother had died, lain upon one of them in the night and crushed her leg, and their father had followed the mother to the grave not long after. She had taken them in, a neighbor, a stranger to the family. She had raised them as her own and loved them as her own. As the woman spoke, Michael looked at the children long and steadily. Then he smiled, his third and final smile, a radiant smile, filled with a light that seemed more than human. Simon saw the light that filled Michael's face and said, "Michael, who are you?" For a moment, the room was still. Then Michael answered, and his voice was unlike any voice Simon had heard before. He said that he was an angel, cast down from heaven for disobeying God. He had been sent to take the soul of a woman who had just given birth to twins. But when he saw her newborns beside her and knew there was no one to care for them, he could not do it. For this, God had cast him to earth, naked and cold, until he learned three truths: what dwells in man, what is not given to man, and what men live by. The first truth, that love dwells in man, he had learned when Matryona took pity on him. The second, that man cannot know what he will need, he had learned from the gentleman who ordered year-long boots and was already dead. Michael's voice grew quiet and clear as he told Simon and Matryona the third truth. When he had seen the woman who cared for the orphaned children as though they were her own, he understood what it is that men live by. It is not care for themselves that keeps men alive. It is love, the love that lives in other people. God did not put it in man's power to know his own needs. What God did place in man is love for one another. He told Simon, "I was shown that men do not live by thought for themselves, but by love. When I was bare and freezing, it was not my own thought that saved me. It was the love in a stranger's heart." Then light blazed through the room, and Michael was gone. Simon and Matryona stood together in the small, bright room, and for a long time neither of them spoke. They had been given something they would never lose.